Do you go from one relationship to the next, constantly on dating sites, afraid to be on your own? Or is it the other extreme, where you're so protective of your heart that you're afraid to let anyone in? These two things, even though they seem very different, stem from the same wound. That feeling of fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, that feeling of not being good enough, that feeling of unworthiness. This is it. We need to try and figure out, why are we constantly seeking outside ourselves for that validation? Or why are we so scared to let that in? It sounds really weird because they're very opposite to each other, but they all come from the same place. My name is Angela Cleary. I'm a feminine empowerment coach. I specialize in healing after narcissistic abuse, and I also offer twin flame and spiritual guidance. This is the thing. Our fear of being alone, or our fear of letting somebody in, is the same thing. Doesn't sound the same, but it is. It stems from the same core wound. That's the same heartbreak, the same heartache. And this is it. We're constantly, so I'm going to start with one and then go into the other. As a serial dater or a serial monogamist, this is a feeling of unworthiness. This comes from the abandonment wound, the fear of rejection. This comes from your inner child. Your fear of being on your own is a fear of abandonment. And this comes from our core childhood wounds. And oftentimes we can seek outside ourselves for that love and validation by constantly dating. And it's not even just, it's dating, it's seeing people, it doesn't have to be serious, or it can be relationship after relationship. How much time do you give yourself between each relationship? How much time do you give yourself to actually be on your own to heal? This is the fucking thing. People think that anything over 6 months is not allowed. You should not be single for long periods of time. This is fucking bullshit. This does not give you enough time to heal your wounding. And this is the thing. We might think, oh, I'm strong. I wasn't hurt by this person. They were only in my life for a brief time. But it doesn't matter if somebody's in your life for 5 seconds or 5 months or 5 years. That wound is still going to hurt. And I watched these dating programs just to see how people react in the dating world. And a person who has been on one date and at the end, one of them says no, the rejected one gets upset. And you might ask, how can you get upset? You've only known the person 5 minutes. It doesn't matter who the person is, what the person did, or how long you've known that person. If you don't heal that core wound, the simple thing of somebody just saying no can really affect you. And then there's this other thing. Oh my God. This one came on the other day. And she was like, I've been single a while now, 6 months. She's like, huh? That's not a while. And then she was obviously embarrassed thinking 6 months was a long time. Because when the bartender asked her, she was like, oh, a few months now. A few months. Afraid to say, why are people afraid to say I haven't had sex in a while? Who gives a fucking shit? And I remember when I first started to see sex differently, see sex as sacred, started to heal my wounding and not, date consistently or continuously. I remember I had a sabbatical or, bit of celibacy for 6 months. And this was at the very start of my journey. And my friends were like, Jesus, that's a long time. You need to get back on the horse. And I'm just like, fucking hell, if you've been wounded from past relationships, 6 months is not enough time to heal yourself. And this is the thing. Our reason for seeking that constant companionship stems from a core abandonment wound, which is triggered over and over and over again every time we feel rejection. And that doesn't even have to be because of romantic relationships. That can be because we might have not succeeded in a certain job, or we had to leave a role, you know what I mean? And you might have quit this job because the job wasn't suited to you, or, it might have been a fact that, last in, first out. It mightn't have anything to do with actual you or your personality or your skills, but that is going to re-trigger your abandonment wound. And all of this, and then friendships as well, friendships you lose in childhood or throughout your life, it's going to consistently or continuously re-trigger your abandonment wound. So if you're constantly dating, or if you're constantly in the need to be in a relationship, you're re-triggering a really deep core wound within you. And that's not going to heal if you don't give yourself time and space to look within and do that healing. And then, oftentimes, because of this pain, because of this inner child within us screaming out for love, we end up attracting the wrong kind over and over again. So hence the reasoning for serial dating or serial monogamy or whatever it is. It is because we keep attracting low vibrational energy, toxic energy, abusive energy. And it will get to the stage where you might actually find, like for me personally, I had I had a few kind of, I call them kiddie relationships in my teens. Constant rejection, constant pain. And I had 2 big relationships in my 20s. One lasted almost 8 years and one lasted 1.5 years. Both of them were extremely fucking toxic, extremely abusive, narcissistic abuse in the first one, and there was violence towards the end of the second one. I attracted these relationships based on my wounding, my constant re-triggering of that abandonment wound. And it's only since, I figured this shit out that I stopped dating. You know what I mean? And it took me a while after the 2 of them to figure this shit out because I actually repeated another pattern. This is how you're going to see it. If you're constantly dating, why are you constantly dating? Because you can't find the right person. Why is that? Because you're attracting the wrong person over and over again. Why is that? Because of your core wounding. This is the thing. And it took me a long time, right? As I said, the 2 relationships in my 20s. So I said to myself after the second one, I was like, I'm going to give myself a break now. I'm not going to get into a relationship. I was still casually dating, we'll call it. But I was like, I'm not ready to let a relationship into my life. But, the thing was, this actually took a while for me to realize. Because after the second relationship broke down, my inner child wound was really fucking triggered. And I actually wanted him back even though he was abusive. And I knew the real me did not want that. But yet deep down inside me, my inner child was screaming out, thinking, I cannot be on my own. I need protection. I need to be minded. I need this. I need this. I need this. What if we could work it out? I didn't want that. But because of that pain inside me, that's what I thought I was going to do. So that's why we put up with that abuse for so long. That's why we think maybe we'll repair this relationship. Not because you consciously know, you know that this isn't for you, but it's because you're so wounded within. So eventually when I started to heal that part of myself, I said, fuck this shit, man. I'm going to wait. I'm not going to get into a relationship now for a long time. I'm going to give myself a break. And I still, as I said, I was casually dating. And then after about, I have to try and figure this out. It was a year. It was a year. I gave myself a year. And I was like, maybe I'm ready now to let somebody in. So I did. I thought, I gave myself a little bit of time. But then, guess what happened? I attracted another fucking narcissist. Thankfully, that only lasted 2 months. But I was like, this was a bigger wake-up call. And I was like, a year wasn't even enough to fucking break a pattern. And that's when I saw it was a pattern. I was like, hold on now. I'm after attracting loads of narcissists. And at the time I was leaving a job because of a narcissistic boss. I was like, boom, 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 ding, 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 ding. These were sirens. The red flags turned into sirens. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? It can't be a coincidence that I keep attracting narcissists. There has to be something wrong. So that's when I discovered my core wounding and my inner child healing. So that's how I broke my pattern. And then I stopped dating. Like, you know what I mean? I've had very few encounters over the last... I have been single since 2018, effectively. Bar that 2-month thing in 2019. I've effectively been single for 7 years. Like, I think it's 7. Yeah, 7 years. So, and I'm not afraid to say that anymore. And I've been celibate for most of that. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not afraid to say that because I don't give a shit what people think about me anymore. I don't need external validation anymore because I've understood why I was seeking outside myself. Now, don't get me wrong. We're going to go to the other extreme now. So we can be abused then. We can see the pattern And then we go to the other side where we're afraid to let people in. We get so closed off. We protect our hearts so much that we're like, if I stay on my own, I can't get hurt. Now, this means I still have more healing to do on my same core wound. It's the same wound, but we react to it in different ways. Yes, I did the right thing by not dating anymore, but then I isolated a little bit too much and closed off to I got so closed off that I actually wasn't even letting friends into my life. Do you know, because I had to walk away from family members as well, so that really closed my heart wound. But like, you know, I actually ended up so isolated that I was afraid to let any kind of love into my life. And that's when I realised I was actually afraid to be loved again. Or, well, I was never actually loved in the first place by anyone, really. But like, you know, I was afraid to let love in. And it's only since that that's the thing, right? That's the other extreme. We fight so hard to heal that part of our unworthiness that we end up closing off so much. And I got to the stage where my heart was turning to stone, and I was still kind of in that triggered wound. You know, I've been working on my heart wound throughout my twin flame journey and my spiritual journey. But I kept saying to myself, I am worthy of love. But, and I kept wondering, the but, what the fuck is the but there for? And then I was realising I was afraid to be loved. And then I was actually realising I was blocking friendship from coming into my life as well. And that's when I had to really, really dig deep. So not only are we healing the core wounding from childhood, which is re-triggered over and over and over and over again, we're adding to that wound by the way we've been treated by the toxic people that we've attracted. So, like, you know, I was after healing my unworthiness wound around my inner child, and I was like, why isn't this fucking working? Because it did work. But I was forgetting the wounding that was triggered by the past relationship, the abusive relationship, which adds another layer to that pain and that feeling of unworthiness. Because what the abuser does is picks on that vulnerability that we had from childhood and makes it bigger. So not only did we have a core wounding, and this is the thing, right? Okay, I'll come back to inner child healing for a second. I didn't know about my inner child. I didn't know she existed. And when I discovered it, I only discovered this in my early 30s. I had unconsciously blamed myself for my mother leaving when I was a child. I spent 30 years believing it was my fault. Now, this is why the inner child healing is so important. Because effectively there's a child inside you that's seeking to be loved. And that child is literally thinking, there's something so wrong with me that my mother couldn't love me. There's something so wrong with me that my mother left just because of me. How can you blame a child for something? You can't. You know, my mother left based on her wounding. My mother left based on her problems. And it had absolutely nothing to do with me. But it took for me until I discovered the inner child healing to actually discover I spent 30 years of my fucking life feeling so unworthy because my mother left that I actually attracted such toxicity into my life. And only in healing that I was able to attract better into my life. But the toxic relationships I had attracted had added to that wound. So it made me afraid to let anyone in again. So I had to face that as well. And this is it. We're basing our unworthiness and our not enoughness on something that was never our fault. And it reminds me of that Good Will Hunting scene. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's, oh my God. Robin Williams and Matt Damon. And, you know, this guy has obviously very traumatic childhood problems. And, you know, Robin Williams is literally just going to him, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And, you know, Matt Damon is like, yeah, I know, yeah, I know. And Robin Williams is like, no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And Matt Damon is like, yeah, whatever, yeah. And Robin just fucking starts, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And then obviously Matt Damon breaks down. And that's the thing. It was never your fucking fault. How could it have been your fault? How can an innocent child be blamed for anything that happened to it. It's just not right. And because of that wound then being triggered by a fucking narcissist telling you that it was your fucking fault, more or less, effectively, you know, metaphorically, that's what adds to this feeling of unworthiness. So we can go from one extreme, which is that fear of being alone, to a complete fear of letting anyone else in again. It all stems from the same fucking place. It all stems from the same core wounding. It all stems from your inner child. So the only way to move past this, the only way to feel that worthiness again, is to reparent and nurture your inner child, to love them the way they are needing to be loved, to validate them the way they deserve to be validated. Because you are worthy. You are enough. You've never, ever done anything wrong to make you unworthy of love. So why are we feeling this way? Why do we feel that we're not good enough? Why do we feel that we're unworthy? And that's because of the serial dating or the serial monogamy and the serial rejection is what it is. We're getting rejected over and over again, but that core wound, because it's not healed, is being re-triggered over and over again. And that's the pain of it. Like if you have a wound that you don't treat. So for example, and this is the thing with mental health, we don't fucking do anything about it because it's internal and we bottle it up. If you have a gaping wound on your fucking knee, what are you going to do? Are you going to ignore it? I'm going to just leave that go. You know, it'll be fine. I'm fine. It's grand. Just ignore that shit. It's going to get infected. It's going to get really fucking bad. It's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse if you don't treat it. So if you're not treating a core wound and you're re-triggering it over and over again with this constant rejection from needing that external validation, it's going to fucking start to get fucking infected. You know, it's like that pressure cooker. You put that shit down on it, it's going to fucking explode. It really is. You know what I mean? We have to start facing what's within us, deep inside us. Because it ends up coming out in volatile ways, whether that's anger, depression, anxiety, use of substances like alcohol or drugs. We're going to try and keep that fucking pressure cooker lid on by distracting ourselves. And it's not going to be fucking healthy. The same with that gaping wound. You know, metaphorically, like a gaping wound on your fucking knee. It's going to get worse, like. We have to go in within ourselves and rediscover the fact that we were always worthy and that it was never, ever, ever, ever your fault. It was never your fault. How could it be the fault of an innocent child? And that innocent child is inside you right now, still blaming themselves for everything that's ever happened, including that abuse you received not only as a child but also as an adult. It's time to tell that child that they are loved, that they are worthy, and that they are enough. And in turn, you will be able to learn that for yourself. Because when we fix and heal our inner child, we can heal that wounding as well. You will only come to love yourself when that child inside you feels that love as well. So it all starts with this. And you are worthy. You are enough. And you do deserve love. I promise you that. You're worthy of the love that you have for yourself. You're worthy of the love of the people in this world. And you are worthy of the most high vibrational, romantic, unconditionally loving relationship that you'll ever have. But the relationship has to start with yourself first. And that relationship has to start with your inner child. So thank you so much for listening today, and I really hope this resonates. If it does, please like and share, and please subscribe to my channel so I can reach as many people as possible. And if you would like help in your journey, please book me for a discovery call today, and I would love nothing more than to help you on your path.